The Zodiac Killer, ciphers, threats, shadows. This is the Zodiac speaking. Before we dive into the darkest criminal mind California has ever known, hit that subscribe button, or the shadows might follow you home. Now, let's begin. The year was 1969. Northern California was caught between the warmth of the counterculture revolution and the cold edge of something far darker. Hippies danced in the streets of San Francisco, protesting war and preaching peace. But just beyond the glow of tie-dye and guitars, a killer was writing his name into history, one body at a time. It started in Vallejo, a quiet town outside the chaos of the city. On July 4th, while fireworks lit the sky, a young couple parked by the Blue Rock Springs golf course. They thought they were alone. Instead, headlights appeared behind them, and a shadow stepped out with a pistol. The crack of gunfire shattered the summer night. Darlene Ferrin died instantly. Her companion, Mike Mageau, barely clung to life. Hours later, the phone rang at Vallejo Police Department. A calm male voice confessed, "I want to report a double murder. If you will go 1 mile east, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." For detectives, it was chilling. He didn't sound rushed. He didn't sound sorry. He sounded proud. Then came the first letter. 3 nearly identical notes mailed to 3 Bay Area newspapers, each containing 1/3 of a coded message. The writer demanded they be published on the front page, or else more would die. At the bottom of the letter was a name, or rather, the lack of one. Signed only, "This is the Zodiac speaking." The ciphers were like something out of a nightmare, hand-drawn with circles, triangles, cryptic symbols, and strange crosshairs. Amateur cryptographers across the country tried to crack them, but the killer taunted. Solve my code, and you'll know my identity. The challenge wasn't just to law enforcement, it was to the entire public. And people listened. Fear spread like wildfire. Parents stopped letting their children walk home at night. Couples stopped parking on lovers' lanes. Investigators scrambled. Detectives pored over the details, the calm voice on the phone, the handwriting in the letters, the symbols in the ciphers. Who was this man who turned murder into a puzzle? He was hunting, but he wanted to be hunted. That contradiction made him even more terrifying. The newspapers gave in, printing the ciphers. Within a week, a schoolteacher and his wife claimed to have solved one of them. The decoded message was a twisted confession: "I like killing people because it is so much fun." But he also added a cruel joke: "I will not give you my name because you will slow me down or stop my collecting of slaves for the afterlife." Even solved, the code raised more questions than answers. He was intelligent, theatrical, and obsessed with power. But his true identity? Still locked in the shadows. As investigators chased leads, the Zodiac struck again. September 27, 1969. Lake Berryessa. A young couple picnicking by the water spotted a man approaching. He wore a black executioner's hood, sunglasses, and a bib stitched with a white crosshair symbol, the same one from his letters. He tied the couple up and stabbed them repeatedly. One survived to describe the haunting costume. Hours later, the Zodiac himself called the police again, his voice calm as ever: "I committed murder. By knife." The Bay Area was in panic. A city known for its freedom now felt trapped by fear. People checked over their shoulders in parking lots. They avoided remote roads. The press turned every letter and every threat into front-page headlines. The Zodiac had become a household name, and that was exactly what he wanted. Then, in October 1969, the killer made his boldest move yet. A cab driver named Paul Stein was shot in San Francisco's Presidio Heights, right in the heart of the city. Witnesses saw the killer wipe down the car before walking away into the night. A note arrived soon after. Not only did the Zodiac take credit, but he included a piece of Stein's blood-stained shirt as proof. It was a direct slap in the face to the police, and a horrifying message to the public. He was untouchable. Detectives pored over suspects. Some believed they were close. Neighbors whispered about men with strange habits. Theories circulated about loners, teachers, or ex-military men. But the Zodiac was always one step ahead, feeding the fire with more letters, more symbols, more promises of bloodshed. By the end of 1969, 5 were dead, dozens of threats were written in ciphers, and California was locked in a dance with a faceless killer. Each clue raised another question. Each murder deepened the mystery. The Zodiac wasn't just killing people, he was killing the very sense of safety in an entire state. And then came a new cipher. It was different. Stranger. Some symbols never seen before. Detectives laid it out on the desk, staring at the pages for hours. What was he hiding this time? A confession? A signature? A clue that would finally unmask him? The paper rustled. A detective swallowed hard. What they saw buried inside that cipher wasn't just a message. It was a threat, a promise of something far worse still to come. Suspects in the shadows, the cipher sat like a ticking bomb on the detectives' desks. Strange shapes, inverted letters, and mysterious symbols mocked them, each line a reminder that the Zodiac was still out there. Every failure to decode it felt like giving him permission to kill again. And as the days passed, the fear wasn't just in Vallejo anymore. It spread into San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento, anywhere his letters reached. He had turned the entire Bay Area into his hunting ground. The press was feeding the fire. The San Francisco Chronicle printed each new letter, and every headline only amplified the killer's fame. Some citizens thought the newspapers were giving him exactly what he wanted. Others believed it was the only way to warn the public. Parents whispered about curfews, teachers warned students not to walk home alone, and strangers glanced nervously at one another on late-night buses. The Zodiac wasn't just killing people. He was planting paranoia. Then came a letter that terrified the city in a way bullets never could. "School children make nice targets," he wrote. "I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." The threat wasn't idle. Police began escorting buses, parents stood at stops, and children were told to duck down in their seats on morning rides. California was holding its breath. Investigators scrambled for suspects. One name kept surfacing: Arthur Lee Allen, a former schoolteacher with a troubled history. He owned the same type of watch that bore the Zodiac's crosshair logo. He told friends strange fantasies about killing couples. He even mentioned a plan eerily similar to the Zodiac's threat against school buses. Detectives thought they finally had their man, but there was no physical evidence. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that tied Alan Dyer to the murders. Every time they leaned closer to him, the Zodiac taunted them with another letter, another cipher, another kill. Alan remained under suspicion, but the case refused to close. The investigation grew more desperate. Police compared handwriting samples, studied typewriters, tested firearms. Psychologists were brought in to profile the killer. They described him as intelligent, manipulative, possibly with military experience, obsessed with symbols and control. He wanted recognition, and he thrived on power over fear. Yet for all the theories, his identity remained a blank space behind the ciphers. In November 1969, the Zodiac called a local television station demanding to speak live on air. Terrified, the station prepared for chaos. Instead, a man called in claiming to be the killer, his voice heavy and calm. He agreed to speak with attorney Melvin Belli, a well-known defense lawyer. Viewers held their breath, wondering if they were hearing the real Zodiac. But the call was riddled with inconsistencies, and police later determined it was a hoax. Still, the damage was done. The Zodiac's legend grew, his shadow darker, his influence stretching into every living room in America. Meanwhile, the real killer was not finished. He wrote again, gloating about his ability to outsmart the police, promising more victims. Each letter included bizarre puzzles, strange symbols, and even diagrams of homemade bombs he claimed he would use on school buses. Investigators raced to verify the threats. The fear was so intense that local authorities actually tested bus routes and adjusted security measures. The Zodiac didn't even need to fire a bullet. His words alone were enough to paralyze the state. As pressure mounted, the task force expanded. Dozens of officers from multiple counties joined forces, comparing notes and sharing leads. Witness sketches from Paul Stinn. E's murder in San Francisco showed a stocky man in glasses, but the drawing seemed too ordinary, too forgettable. He could be anyone, a neighbor, a coworker, even someone sitting at the diner down the street. That was the Zodiac's greatest weapon, invisibility in plain sight, yet investigators were closing in, or so they thought. A tip came from someone who had seen a suspicious man loitering near the crime scenes. Another witness recalled a neighbor with a secretive routine. Police interviewed dozens of men, checking alibis, chasing dead ends. Each suspect looked promising, but the evidence slipped like sand through their fingers. The Zodiac remained untouchable, his cipher unsolved, his identity a ghost, and then, just as the investigation reached its most frantic pace, another letter arrived. This one was different. It wasn't just words, it contained a map. A crude drawing of the Bay Area, marked with a crosshair over Mount Diablo. Next to it, a cryptic formula, coordinates, numbers, and symbols. Was it a treasure hunt? A bomb threat? A clue to his identity? Detectives spread the map across their desks, rulers and compasses in hand. Every officer leaned in, calculating angles, tracing lines, searching for meaning. If they could solve it, maybe they could find him. Maybe they could end this nightmare. But just as one detective thought he had cracked the pattern, something else caught his eye, a faint mark in the corner of the paper. It wasn't part of the map. It looked like initials. The room fell silent. If those letters were real, if they belonged to the Zodiac, then for the first time, the mask was slipping. The man behind the ciphers, the initials on the corner of the map, sent a jolt through the investigation room. They were faint, almost like an afterthought, two simple letters that didn't belong among the numbers and symbols. Detectives leaned in, magnifying glass in hand, whispering theories. Could the Zodiac have finally made a mistake? They traced the letters back to one of the suspects they'd been circling for months. Arthur Lee Allen. The watch with the crosshair logo. The disturbing conversations about hunting humans. The military-style boots that matched prints at one of the crime scenes. It all seemed to converge on him. The task force prepared a search. They went through his trailer, his cabin, his storage boxes. They found bizarre items, explosives manuals, strange sexual paraphernalia, even bloody knives. Each discovery sent a shiver down their spines. But then came the crushing realization, none of it connected directly to the murders. No fingerprints matching those left at the cab. No bullets that matched the gun. No DNA that tied him to the letters. Allen remained the prime suspect in the public eye, but in court, the evidence was smoke without fire. Meanwhile, the Zodiac continued to write. His letters grew stranger, more mocking. One included a piece of a bloody shirt from Paul Stein, a cruel reminder that he could always prove his claims. Another contained a 340-symbol cipher so complex that decades would pass before anyone managed to decode it. In that cipher, he bragged about his crimes but denied being afraid of the gas chamber. I am not afraid because I know I will have new life in paradise. But then, the killings seemed to stop. No new bodies. No new confessions. The letters became sporadic, then ceased altogether. It was as if the Zodiac had dissolved back into the crowd, leaving his legend behind to do the killing for him, for Investigato. It was torture. They had poured years into chasing him, only to be left with nothing but shadows. Some detectives never recovered, their careers consumed by the case. Others refused to give up, following leads well into retirement. Each believed they were one clue away from unmasking him. For the public, the Zodiac became myth. His symbol, the crosshair, was scratched into bathroom stalls, carved into school desks, whispered about at bus stops. Parents warned children not to talk to strangers, not because of statistics, but because of the man who once promised to target school buses. Fear had become folklore. Decades later, new technology brought hope. DNA analysis, once a dream, was now a tool. Samples from envelopes and stamps were tested, but time had corroded the evidence. Each attempt ended in frustration. Still, new suspects emerged, men with criminal pasts, eerie coincidences, strange confessions. One group of investigators even claimed to have identified him, but without physical proof, the case remained officially unsolved, and so the Zodiac's shadow endures. A faceless man who once turned Northern California into a chessboard, who made the press his pawn and the police his opponents. A killer who sought not just blood, but immortality through fear. He didn't just kill victims, he killed trust, safety, the illusion that innocence could survive unbroken. But here is the most haunting part: every few years, another letter surfaces. Some are fakes. Some are debated. But every time, the handwriting, the tone, the arrogance, it feels like the Zodiac's voice reaching out from the grave. They thought the killings ended in the 1970s. But what if they didn't? What if the Zodiac simply changed his hunting ground, his methods, his disguise? What if he walked past you once, invisible in the crowd, his secret intact? The case files remain open. The questions remain unanswered. The ciphers still whisper from their yellowing paper, daring anyone to solve them. And somewhere out there, perhaps even now, someone knows the truth. The Zodiac wanted immortality. In a way, he got it. His shadow stretches across decades, unsolved, eternal. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all. If you think this story was chilling, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, before the shadows find you first.